On August 24th, 2026 is the street date for the Battle for Blackscar battle box for Heroscape, which is another starting point of Heroscape. And because I like when people have something that looks like what they own to learn the rules with, I'm going to go over the rule book from that. Now, this rulebook is a very shortened version of the full rules of the game, which Renegade Game Studios has online, and I'm probably going to update it as stuff comes out. But right now, it's the Secrets of the Citadel Master Game Rulebook, which I'm thinking about making a video over as well. But if you go to Heroscape.com or Renegade Game Studios website, it is available on the Heroscape landing page as something you can download and use. I will not be going over the scenario building and the scenario rules, just the rulebook that comes with the battle box as it is presented. Alright, we'll be going over the rulebook as it is presented. So there will be basic game guide stuff and master game guide stuff, but you can always use the chapters and the timing stamps to get to the rules that you specifically want if you want to skip over things like the basic game. Now, the first step for both the basic and master game of Heroscape is the same. Build your battlefield. You can either build your battlefield through a scenario, just throwing together whatever terrain you have and making what you want, or by looking online and finding various maps that are both competitive or casual, and building one of those if you have the terrain components necessary. But when building a pre-made map, every map will have levels 1 through however tall it is, and tell you where to place your tiles, your obstacles, your glyphs, and everything else that is required to play the game. The next step for playing for both the basic and master game is choosing your army. Inside the Battle for Blackscar battle box there are 6 figures, and it's pretty even, just divide them in half. And the scenarios will tell you which units are in those armies and where they start. Otherwise, you can do things like drafting, drawing at random, or just pulling from your collection and throwing together whatever you want because it's just appealing to you. And there is a lot to Heroscape. There is something for every flavor, from historical to sci-fi to fantasy, and spaces in between and mixed. But to go over more in-depth army building, I would advise to look online or look at the master rulebook or some of the older rulebooks that tell you how to do things like drafting or draft pools and other things like that. This is going to be pretty simple though for the battle box. Next up, for the basic game, you'll have to gather your combat dice. That comes with 8 of these, but for the master game, you'll need the combat dice, a 20-sided die, and a set of 4 order markers per player, and those go 1, 2, 3, and X. Each player takes 4 order markers, 1, 2, 3, and X, as I said. In each round, you'll place these markers on your army cards to mark the order in which your figures will move and attack. Wound markers are used to record the damage figures suffer by placing them on matching army cards. The 20-sided die is used for initiative and to resolve various powers and effects. And the combat dice are used as attack dice when you roll for skulls, and also defense dice when you roll for shields. Here's how an army card breaks down on the basic game side. Each figure in the Battle for Blackscar battle box has a corresponding army card. Army cards are double-sided, with one side used for the basic game and the opposite side used for the master game. Number 1 will be the portrait of your figure. Then, you have the collector info down here. It tells you where the figures are from in the world of Heroscape, which set they came in, and their number within that set. This is their move value, has a maximum move of 6 spaces. This is his range value. He can attack up to 1 space away. This is his attack value. He rolls 4 dice when he attacks. And this is his defense value. He rolls 6 dice when he defends. Here's how an army card breaks down on the master side of the army card. Up here is going to be their affiliation. This symbol is the unique mark of the organization or Valkyrie general that the figure follows. Here's the figure's name. This is what the figure and its army card are called. This name may be shortened or abbreviated in special powers shown on the card. This here is going to be the species, biological classification of that figure. Special powers may sometimes reference this. Then here is going to be their uniqueness. All army cards in the Battle for Blackscar battle box are unique, but cards are unique, uncommon, or common, and they have hero or squad. When selecting army cards for your army, you cannot select more than 1 unique army card with the same name. You may select any number of the same common army card or uncommon army card, Those rules are gone over in another video, or again, as I say, on the master rulebook available on Renegade Game Studios or the Heroscape.com. And like I said, part of that classification is hero or squad. All army cards are either hero or squad cards. Hero cards feature a single figure capable of acting on their own in the heat of battle. Squad cards feature 2 or more figures who all act together. All of the army cards in the Battle for Blackscar battle box are heroes. This here is going to be their class. This is the type of figure they are. Special powers may sometimes reference this. If a card has 2 classes, it will be separated by an and treated as having both for any game effects. Underneath that is going to be the personality. This figure's dominant behavior in the world of Heroscape. Special powers may sometimes reference this. And this is their size, the overall weight category of this figure, medium. Then, next to that is a little number, their height. That's the number of levels tall that the figure is. Then, this major part of text here that most special cards have is their special powers. Most figures have 1 or more special powers that allow them to go above and beyond the standard attacking, moving, and defending. And then you have their portrait here. You have their target point here, which is determined for line of sight and clear sight with ranged attacks and special powers. Then you have their target point from which they draw line of sight. I'm sorry, this is the hit zone, not the target point. The target point is the little green dot on them. Some of them have multiple. Red is their hit zone. The red area shows what part of the figure can be attacked, used when determining line of sight. Gray areas cannot be targeted. And you have their life value right here, the number of wounds it takes to destroy each figure on the army card. You have their move value, the maximum number of spaces this figure may move. The range value, the maximum number of spaces this figure may attack away. And their attack value, the number of dice you roll with the figure's normal attack. Their defense value, the number of dice you roll when the figure defends, and their point cost, the cost of drafting this army card and its figure into your army. It's also used to determine scoring in games where you will use scoring. And now, for the basic game, the battle will begin. Each player will roll 6 combat dice. The player who rolls the most skulls takes the first turn. Re-roll if there's a tie. Players then alternate taking turns until one player has no more figures on the battlefield. And a basic game will consist of 3 steps on your turn. Step 1, choose an army card. Step 2, move the corresponding figure. And Step 3, attack with the corresponding figure. All 3 of those steps will be explained in detail for both the Master and Basic game, so just skip to those segments if you want to learn the difference. And now we'll break down how to begin the battle with a Master game. A Master game's a little different. It's played over several rounds. A round consists of 3 player turns for each player. During each of your player turns, you will reveal an order marker on one of your army cards, then move and attack with the figure represented by that army card. Each round will consist of 4 steps in the Master game. Place your order markers, roll for initiative, take your player turns, and end the round. We'll go over those steps and then take a break for the movement and things. You'll see if you look at the chapters how this is laid out. But number 1 is placing your order markers. During the place order marker step, you must decide which army card you'll use on each of your 3 player turns. Place order markers on those cards. 1 for your first player turn, 2 for your second turn, and 3 for your third turn. You may place 2 or more order markers on the same card if you want to use that card for 2 or even all 3 of your turns for that round. The X order marker does not inherently do anything. It has no intrinsic effect. It's a decoy to prevent your opponents from knowing which numbered order markers you actually intend to use. Some army cards and abilities will utilize the X order marker. Place it carefully to misdirect your opponent or trigger the special powers of certain figures. Players place the order markers at the same time. Place your order markers within the numbers facing you so your opponent can't see them. Be careful how you place them. Usually you cannot change them later, and you must use those figures in that order for the round. So, hope you really wanted to use Agent SI-4X. Step 2 of the Master game, roll for initiative. After placing order markers, each player rolls the 20-sided die for initiative to determine who goes first. Re-roll if there's a tie. The player who rolls the highest result is the initiative winner and will take the first player turn that round. And then you will take your player turns. During a round, players alternate taking player turns, starting with the player with initiative. That player reveals their 1 order marker on one of their army cards and moves and attacks with the corresponding figure. Then the opposing player reveals their 1 order marker and does the same. Play then passes back to the other player, who reveals their 2 order marker and takes another player turn. And play will continue alternating this way until both players have played their 3 numbered order markers and taken their 3 player turns. Some powers and things will let you utilize the X order marker or may change this, but once all the order markers are revealed on both sides, the round ends. So, in the Master game, the first step of every turn is begin your player turn by revealing the next order marker in sequence and laying it number side up on the army card it was placed on. If the figure on that card has been destroyed, your player turn immediately ends. Now we'll go over movement. You can move the figure shown on the army card that you chose if you're playing the basic game, or that is on your active current order marker if you are playing the Master game. You can move a figure in any direction, any number of spaces equal to its move value. So for an example here, we have Nishi with a movement of 6. Nishi Suta can move up to 6 spaces. Uneven terrain may limit the movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can move through figures on a space occupied by a figure you control, but you cannot move through a space occupied by an opponent's figure. You cannot end a figure's move on a space occupied by any other figure. 1, 2, and he would have to stop there. You could continue to move other ways around with the rest of your 6 movement points, but we'll get into special things like leaving engagement attacks and adjacency and engaged in the Master game rules. But for this example, Nishi cannot move through the enemy Agent SI-4X. Obstacles. Walls, shroud shrooms, and other large barriers are known as obstacles. A figure cannot move through or onto obstacles. Moving up and down. In Heroscape, the battlefield is rarely flat. Each layer of the same height tiles is called a level. Your figure's level is the same as the level of its tile it's currently standing on. When you move to a higher level, count the side of each tile you ascend to determine how much extra movement it takes to reach the new higher level. When you move to any lower level, you do not need to count extra movement on the way down. So if Nishi was going to go up here, it'd be 1, 2, 3, and then he could move down there for 4. Now you'll notice that this tile here is a little different. This is a special tile. It is a thin tile called a shadow tile, designed to be placed on top of the interlocking terrain tiles to apply additional effects. For the purposes of gameplay, these tiles do not add height to the tiles they are placed on top of. When placed on the surface of the table, these tiles represent level 0. Therefore, a figure moving from level 0 tile to an adjacent tile must count the side of each land tile as they move up. That is why I counted this one here for Nishi and this one. 1, 2, 3. Other sets will have different 0 height tiles. Now, something I'm going to say quite a few times in this video is that this is a shorthand version of the rulebook. You only get what you need to play with what's in the battle box. There are things like double space figure, double space movement, stopping in water, etc. Those are available in other rulebooks and sets. The difference in the Master rules for moving is that they have the following exceptions. First is adjacency. To be adjacent, 2 figures must be on spaces that are next to each other. Friendly figures, figures you control, can be adjacent to each other but are never engaged with each other. Engaged. A figure that is adjacent to an enemy figure is engaged with that figure. Your figures cannot move through friendly figures that are engaged. 1, so he would have to go 2, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, and continue moving along. But now what happens if you try to leave that engagement? Because you are not stuck in engagement. Your figure may move around an opponent's figure that is engaged without difficulty, but as soon as your figure attempts to move away onto a space that is not adjacent, your opponent's figure may take a leaving engagement attack against your figure. To do this, the player who controls the opposing figure rolls 1 die, and that will be regardless of their attack value. You do not roll any dice to defend your figure. Their back is turned as they leave. If a skull is rolled, your figure takes 1 wound. Place 1 wound marker on its army card. Despite their name, leaving engagement attacks are not attacks. You can have multiple engagements. Your figure may become engaged with more than one figure at the same time. As you leave each engagement, that opposing figure may take 1 leaving engagement attack by rolling 1 attack die. For each skull rolled, your figure receives 1 wound. Nishi's trying to dip out. That's 3. He's dead because of his previous wound and the 3 he just got. And now we'll talk about attacking with the corresponding figure. That's step 3 of the basic game, but it is also part of step 3 for the master game of taking your player turn, which is a little different, and we'll get into that later. Now, if the figure represented by your chosen army card is within range of an opponent's figure and has sight, it can attack. If the figure does not meet these two conditions, it can't attack and your turn is over. To determine if a figure can attack, check the corresponding figure's range and sight, which we will get into. First off is their range. A targeted figure must be within the attacking figure's range. For example, Blink Dawson has a range value of 7 here, so he can attack any figure within 7 spaces of himself. If the distance between your figure and the target figure includes an area with no spaces, for example, near the edge of a board here, you can still attack, but you must also count the empty spaces to check range. And when checking range, don't count extra spaces for any difference in levels. So shooting up is not like moving up. When determining range, you can just pretend that it is a top-down view, like Grand Theft Auto 1 on the PS1 style. Then you'll check your sight. To attack a figure, your figure must be able to, quote-unquote, see it from its location. For example, if the target figure is behind an obstacle and the attacker can't see any part of it, then no attack is possible. To tell if your figure has sight, get behind its head and look at the targeted figure. If you can see any part of the other figure, you have line of sight. Players may touch or move only their own figures and may only do so on their turns. For example, you cannot adjust your figure to be out of line of sight on an opponent's turn, so yeah, no cheating like that. But that's a safe spot anyway. Oh, but his cloak is targetable. Now, you can also look for hidden figures at any time. You can walk around the battlefield to find out which figures are hiding in raised areas or behind shroud shrooms. Now, attacking with figures in the master game is just a little bit different. There are things instead of just sight, it's clear sight or line of sight. The difference is, clear sight, figures in the master game have a green target point on their army card that is illustrated. Some of them have several because of having several eyes or points from which they see. If the figure represents your chosen army card is within range and has sight to a target, it can attack. To determine if it has clear sight to another figure, such as Agent SI4X, you get behind the figure's target point to determine if it can see any part of that figure. Any part is clear sight. Now, line of sight is a little different. Figures in the master game have that green target point and red hit zones illustrated on their army card. To determine if the attacking figure has line of sight, check its target point and the target figure's hit zone, and then get behind the attacking figure to see if its target point can see any part of the target figure's hit zone. If it can, the attacker has line of sight. So the difference between clear sight and line of sight is line of sight must see red parts of the miniature. Clear sight is any part of the miniature. Now, while Blink here has a range of 7, a figure that is engaged with one or more enemy figures can choose only figures it is engaged with, unless special powers permit, to be the target of its attacks. They do not require line of sight when engaged to a target. Now, in the basic game, resolving an attack is done as follows. Announce which of your figures is the attacker and the figure that is going to be defending. Blink is going to attack SI4X. The attacker rolls a number of combat dice equal to the attack value on its army card, plus an additional die if the attacking figure's base is on a higher level than the base of the other figure. That is called height advantage. So, Blink being higher would roll 3. And he scored a hit. You hope to roll skulls when you're attacking. Then, the defender rolls a number of combat dice equal to their defense value on its army card, which in this case is 5, plus an additional die if the defending figure is on a higher level than the base of the other figure. So, if the rolls were reversed and Blink was still attacking, he has height advantage, which would put his defense value to 6 instead. Hoping to roll shields when defending. Now, if you remember the results, if the attacker rolls more skulls than the defender rolls shields, the attack is successful and the defender is destroyed in the basic game, because everyone has 1 life. The player controls it, removes it from the battlefield, otherwise the defender remains on the battlefield and the attack ends. And then, that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go over much else for the basic game because we're now just going to enter the master game rules. So to end the battle in the basic game, it's just when there are no other figures left on the battlefield, the game is over. Now, resolving an attack in the master game is very similar to the basic game, but with some extra steps. First, you declare your attack. Agent SI-4X is going to attack Blink Dawson. Announce which of your figures is the attacker, whether it's using a normal or special attack, and which figure it is attacking. Now, SI-4X has no special attack, so his attack will be normal, but his abilities may come into play. Then, if you're making a normal attack, the attacker rolls a number of combat dice equal to the attack value on its army card, adding any extra dice for height advantage, special powers, and glyphs. If making a special attack, the attack cannot be modified by glyphs or special powers or height advantage. And that's if you're making a special attack. Normal attacks can be modified, special attacks cannot. So, with his attack of 2, plus 1 for height, he's got 3 incoming to Blink. So then, the defender would roll their defense dice. The defender rolls a number of combat dice equal to the defense value on its army card, which is 2 in this case, adding any extra dice for height advantage. He does not have height advantage. Any special powers or glyphs, and you hope to roll shields. The defender can roll these extra dice even against special attacks. So if you had height advantage or powers against a special attack, you get the extra. Blink does not. But Blink blocks 2 and only receives 1 wound. Almost dead still. Because that brought you into the last step of comparing results. If the attacker rolls more skulls than shields, then the attack is successful. Each skull rolled not blocked by a shield, place 1 wound marker on the defender's army card. If the defender now has wound markers equal to or greater than the life value on its army card, it is destroyed. The player who controls the destroyed figure places it on its army card and returns any wound markers on that card to the supply. Otherwise, the defender remains on the battlefield and the attack ends. So, after all that, we'll just say Blink Dawson has died. At the end of every round, you will always check for victory conditions. At the end of each player turn, players check the victory conditions for scenarios or the situation they're currently playing. It's not just at the end of the round, it's at the end of every player turn. So if your object was to destroy your other enemies, they're dead here because you have your 2 allies left. That victory condition has been met. Sometimes scenarios will have different conditions. Anyway, if both players have satisfied the victory conditions simultaneously, the game is a draw. Otherwise, the game continues to the next player turn. If there are no more player turns left to resolve, move to the end of the round. So, at the end of the round, you remove all your order markers from your army cards and advance the round marker on its track, if you are keeping track of rounds. A new round then begins, and repeat the steps until the games conclude. Now we'll talk about special powers. Special powers are things that the figures can do to keep the game exciting, challenging, and unpredictable. Always be aware of the special powers your figures possess. They can make a big difference in your game. Sometimes you'd need clear sight to a figure, like Sudima's Petrifying Glare special power requires that it affects a figure to be within 5 clear sight spaces. To determine whether a figure is within clear sight, use Sudima's target point, which she has many. If she can see any part of a figure, not just their hit zone, and that figure is within 5 spaces of her, ignoring elevations, it can be affected by Petrifying Glare 9. Sometimes a special power on your army card may just be a keyword, like flying, stealth flying, or swim, or other words like that. Those are broken down in the respective rulebooks that came with that character, or part of that story arc that they came from. So we'll go over stealth flying here. It's a power that is unusually wordy and typically not written out full on glyphs or army cards. A figure with stealth flying power may choose to fly at any point during its movement. When a figure with stealth flying chooses to fly, it does not take leaving engagement attacks. While the figure is flying, it ignores all elevations, is not considered to occupy any space that it passes over, and this means that it is not adjacent or engaged with any figures. It may pass over any figures, even ones that would normally prevent other figures from entering their space. It ignores all terrain effects, such as water. It may pass over any space occupied by terrain, such as the young shroud shrooms. And it ignores effects on all glyphs it passes over. That includes not having to stop on a space with a power glyph. It is not affected by any special powers that require adjacency, clear sight, or line of sight. A figure can use stealth flying special power at any time it moves. When a figure moves onto a new space, it may stop flying and land in its current space. When doing so, it enters that space and may trigger effects that occur when a figure enters a space. It is also affected by the terrain it lands on. If that terrain has an effect on figures that enter its space, that figure is then considered to be on that space until it next starts to fly, and it may continue its movement. When a figure ends its movement, it must land on its current space. So, pretty wordy power for Corvin. Now, in the Master Game, almost all of your army cards will always have special powers. These can turn the tide of battle or have a great effect, so pay attention to them, try and remember what they do to the best of your ability, and, if you're a good sport, make sure you remind your opponent if they have something that they can do against you with their special powers. It might suck, but it's good sportsmanship to do so. Anyway, those powers are going to be available at all times. They may not always work at all times, but they will change how the game plays. And one final note, which was not gone over in the rulebook as far as I could tell, but is probably done in the scenario book, is shadows. What do they do? Well, a small, medium, or large figure on one or more shadow tiles adds 1 to its defense value. So if you have a 2-based figure and it's on 2 shadow tiles, you'll still only get the 1 extra defense. Now we're going to go over something called a Destructible Object. The Battle for Blackscar battle box includes 2 height 7 young Shroud Shrooms. A type of destructible object. Destructible objects obey the following rules. Destructible objects are not figures, and they can be targeted and attacked as if they were normal figures, with some exceptions. A destructible object can be targeted or attacked only by normal attacks. Special attacks are special powers that only inflict wounds. Special powers that do not inflict wounds cannot affect a destructible object unless specifically stated in that power. Special powers or special attacks that mention destroy as one of its effects cannot target or affect a destructible object unless specifically stated in that power. They are not normally considered adjacent or engaged with any figures. A destructible object is considered a figure for the purpose of adjacency and engagement only when a figure targets it for an attack or special power. Powers that are depending on adjacency or height advantage can modify an attack against a destructible object. So, this base of this here, if SI4X was using a ranged attack down onto that young Shroud Shroom, he gets height advantage. Now, the Shroud Shrooms have special abilities that are akin to special abilities on your Master Side game cards, but the young Shroud Shroom's life value can be tracked by using the hole on top as a receptacle for a wound marker. Replaceable as a receptacle, because the young Shroud Shroom has 2 life. Now I'm going to wrap up the video with a little bit on advanced range and clear sight. This battle box contains elements which affect standard rules for range and clear sight. For example, Corvin the Rotbeak and the Shroud Shrooms themselves. So we have Corvin's ability here, Eyes in the Sky, for special powers that are not attacks on army cards of unique undead and wizard heroes you control. You may treat figures within clear sight of Corvin as within clear sight of the undead wizard or the undead or wizard hero. When doing so, count range from Corvin instead of the undead or wizard hero. Sudima, being undead, needs the Petrifying Glare 9 and has her typical range for clear sight within 5 clear sight spaces. So, again, determining range, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he's out of it, but using Corvin's special power, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can use Corvin instead. Now, the Shroud Shroom negates that, because you can look at the power here. Small and medium figures within 1 space of a young Shroud Shroom cannot determine clear sight and are not in clear sight of any figure. So Corvin cannot use his power. However, Blink can actually move up and attack. Because they are engaged, they can attack. Even though the attack said that you do not determine line of sight when engaged, it says here that you can attack when you're engaged, so clear sight doesn't even matter when you're engaged. And finally, you can expand your collection with new figures and terrain. You'll encounter new rules not covered in this rulebook or this video. Go to this website here, renegadegamestudios.com/heroscape-play, to download the comprehensive Master Game Rulebook. And this Master Game Rulebook will have much more in-depth things for you to look at about placing your order markers, moving, obstacles, double-spaced figures, special, different things. I should get new printer ink. but it'll also go over line of sight, range, terrain special effects, obstacles, cannons, trees, all the glyphs. It goes over pretty much everything in the history of Heroscape. Almost. It does not go over anything unique to the Marvel A Conflict Begins master set. Interestingly, it does go over uncommon units in the game. So it does have unique, uncommon, and common, and we'll tell you how to use those. Uncommon units appeared back in the Wizards of the Coast, having the reins of the intellectual property and making uncommon heroes. But that should be everything you need to get started on your Heroscape journey. This is a very bare bones version of the game. The battle box is only designed to give you a little taste of the game, and then you will get into it and expand your collection and expand the amount of fun you will have, because there is a lot more to this game than the surface level would say. It is very fun.